What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Being a Reaction. Today, we're about to look at why is Halo 2 campaign so effing awesome by Act Man. Let's go to get it started.
Money making season and being broke is treason.
What's up, everybody? This is the fuck. What's up, everybody? Shit. What's up, God damn it.
I was trying not to cuss because of the YouTube algorithm, and he just started cussing in the beginning, like just straight out. Usually, the way the algorithm works, if you cuss in the beginning, you get like age gated, or like your views don't go as far, or your reach doesn't go far. He apparently just doesn't care and just started cussing right in the beginning.
What's up, everybody? This is the fuck. What's up, everybody? Shit. What's up, God damn it. Well, there's no easy way to ask this question, but why the fuck is Halo 2's campaign so hard? We've all seen the Sniper Jackal memes, we've all yelled at our buddy when they did something stupid and we both had to revert back to checkpoint. We've all played it on Legendary, and if by some chance you haven't, well, let me just tell you, it's one of the hardest first-person shooter games ever made.
And that's why I haven't.
On the same plane as Legendary. No, the difficulty far surpasses that. It goes straight into mythic territory. But have you ever actually stopped to think about what makes it so difficult? I mean, beyond the simple, obvious stuff. Have you ever actually considered the difficulty from the perspective of game design? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. But this task I must undertake as the Act Man is perilous, suicidal. I will die as each player has before me. And that is why I will have Hokiebird428 help me.
Hokiebird.
What's up, guys? Hokiebird here, and today we're gonna talk about Halo 2.
Thanks for joining me, dude. Now I gotta ask, are you sure you're ready to do this? Because there's no turning back.
I've done this more than a few times, so we're in for a rough ride, but we'll get through it.
He's been playing Halo for a long time, and he knows his shit when it comes to the campaigns. You can check out his channel to find full Legendary walkthroughs for all of the Halo games, and his tutorials.
He play on Legendary? Shout out to him.
Just so everyone knows, he's credible. Far credible than I am, in fact. There aren't many people in the world who would be willing to embark on this dangerous journey. This dangerous, great journey.
Someone named Jervelin recently beat Halo 2 Legendary Lasso. Yeah, they was talking about that in the Discord. Lasso, and it seems extremely hard to do Lasso. Like all the stuff that they was talking about in there, like all the skulls and everything that's activated, seems incredibly tough. Like they're all invisible and shoot more and can alert it to just you walking. I don't know how anybody did that, but it was like a 6-hour thing, so I didn't watch it yet. I do want to see it, but I'm not reacting to that. That's too long. But I'll watch it on my own just to see like how he did that.
Would be willing to embark on this dangerous journey, this dangerous great journey. But if you want to know the truth, then we will show it to you. So in our eyes, there are 7 to 9 fatal flaws that define and create Halo 2's extremely difficult Legendary campaign. And we're going to start with the worst and most crippling of them all. As we see in the opening cutscene, Master Chief's old hardware was in pretty bad shape, so he got
Rocket Sloth did a video.
A badass, fresh off the press motherfucking suit of Spartan 6 armor. And as you can see, the shields recharge a lot faster, and apparently are extremely resilient.
Your new armor shields are extremely resilient, very efficient. Extremely resilient, extremely resilient, extremely resilient, extremely resilient, extremely resilient. My ass!
But what the game doesn't tell you is this is the most brittle suit of Spartan armor ever created, and that's the crippling flaw. This time around, you are the second weakest entity in the entire game.
Yeah, you feel weaker than in Halo 1.
For then is the flood infection forms which die in one hit, but everything else will absorb more firepower than you do. This alone turns Halo 2 into a game where you are constantly forced to hide behind cover, and it nearly eliminates that feeling of being a badass super soldier like you were in the first game. When enemies shoot at you, the time to kill is the fastest out of all the Halos, even ODST when you're supposed to be weaker than a Spartan. I mean, what sense does that make? Now this wouldn't piss me
Twitch
off
being weird keeps pausing the stream.
build up this new suit of armor as being better than the previous version. Actually, wait, yeah, it'd still piss me off. I'm not making this up, and if you played all the Halo games, you should have noticed this anyways. For shits and giggles, let's do a little science experiment and compare the time to kill for either elites or brutes in all the Halo games. So in Combat Evolved, one-on-one,
It's fine on my end. Yeah, I don't got any errors. I don't have any errors on my thing. It's good for me. Okay, cool. Yeah, it might just be targeting you, man. That's tough.
This up, and if you played all the Halo games, you should have noticed this anyways. For shits and giggles, let's do a little science experiment and compare the time to kill for either elites or brutes in all the Halo games. So in Combat Evolved, one-on-one, it takes an elite little more than 10 seconds and 22 shots to kill you. Halo 2, 9 shots, within less than a second you are dead. Halo 3 takes 11 shots and 4 seconds, and it's important to note the enemies take longer pauses in between firing. ODST takes about 15 to 20 shots, but timing depends because oftentimes the brutes will try to melee you or throw grenades, so about 7 seconds or longer. Halo 4 takes 12 shots in about 7 seconds, but also has bigger pauses in between firing. Now, Halo 5 comes surprisingly close at 7 shots in 2.5 seconds, so it's almost as bad as Halo 2, but you do have the squad mechanic. Now, if there's one thing that this showcases, it should be how radically different Halo 2 has been designed apart from all the other games, and why that negatively affects the experience overall, especially Legendary. And at this point, I'd like to say Legendary is supposed to be the true difficulty. It's not meant to be a fuck you difficulty. That's where Combat Evolved and Halo 2 differ. Legendary and CE was a brutal but fair challenge, and Halo 2 is a brutally unfair challenge. This is the way—
Oh, he got him right off the vehicle.
Without giving a handicap to the enemies, a blatant advantage to the player, or vice versa. And that's all well and good, but in a Halo game, the challenge should not be completely absurd, because you're not just some random soldier wearing a pussy-ass Kevlar vest and an M16, you're a goddamn Spartan, and the gameplay should reflect that. But in Halo 2, it simply doesn't. You gotta take every enemy seriously, because all it takes is one mistake for them to kill you nearly instantly.
We've already talked about your resilience as the player, so this is the other side.
Oh, I forgot Hokiebird was here.
Difficulty of the enemies. Now, enemy difficulty in Halo is very complex, and it has a ton of different factors affecting it. But to keep things simple, we'll break it down into 2 categories: enemy resilience, or defense, and enemy aggression, or offense. Let's start with defense. This pretty much boils down to how much damage an enemy can take before succumbing to death. Now, Halo throws a curveball at you in the form of what Bungie calls hard pings. Basically, these are attacks that kill instantly no matter how much damage they do, such as headshots, needler detonations, assassinations, and plasma grenade sticks. To be honest, these are the only saving graces that make Halo 2 even remotely possible on Legendary, but for now, just to avoid confusion, we'll be ignoring them to better understand enemy defense. Surprisingly enough, enemies in Halo 2 aren't that much stronger defensively than they were in Halo Combat Evolved. Sure, the Hunters are no longer instant kills with a headshot weapon, and the Ultra Elites have really strong shields, but look at this. I've gone back and recorded myself playing my original copy of Halo 2, which is backwards compatible on the Xbox 360, and I've executed a glitch where I have permanent active camo so the enemies can't see me to shoot back at me. And for those of you that are doubting me, yes, this is on Legendary because this glitch can't be executed on any difficulty other than Legendary.
Okay.
Just look at how I'm messing around. Yeah, I'm playing really stupidly and not using cover because I know the enemies can't see me to shoot back at me, but because I'm not dying in less than a second, do the enemies really look all that spongy compared to Halo CE? No, not really. The only real sponginess is when I try to kill a Jackal with a battle rifle without aiming for its head, because the battle rifle isn't meant to be used like this. Now for offense. This is the kicker, or killer.
I remember watching Hokiebird see Legendary walkthrough back then.
Has been ramped up to 11 for Legendary in Halo 2. Again, there are
So he's been around for a while.
traits that get modified when you increase game difficulty. So here's a few of the most obvious ones. Enemy numbers increase. Enemies do more damage. Enemies notice you faster and take less time to start shooting when they see you. Enemy accuracy and shot tracking are increased. Plasma projectiles move through the air faster. Enemy fire rate increases. Enemies fire in longer bursts, and the pauses between those bursts are shorter.
Dang, he got demolished.
It's impossible to show each of these traits individually, but you all know what a perfect shitstorm they make when they're combined together. The other well-known thing that enemies do in Halo 2 is to aggressively fire at the spot where they last saw you, despite not being able to see you there any longer. This forces you to use a tactic known as redirection, which is when you stick your head out in one place, duck behind cover, and then stick your head out somewhere else where the enemies aren't looking yet. Believe it or not,
Hey, that's pretty smart.
CE had all this, but each of these traits was carefully tuned and calibrated by sandbox engineer Jamie Greisemer. Halo 2 had no such calibration, resulting in enemies firing their weapons faster than is physically possible by the player with superhuman accuracy, while still only needing about 5 shots to kill.
That's one thing I'll give Halo, that their AI is usually like really smart compared to other games. Like I played a whole bunch of other shooters, and the AI in those games do not compare to the smarts, the intelligence of the Halo AI. They're really above the other ones. Very true, yeah.
Possible by the player with superhuman accuracy, while still only needing about 5 shots to kill you. Oh, and they start shooting in about 2/3 of a second after they've noticed you. The insanely short time to kill you combined with enemy aggression results in enemies that aren't total bullet sponges, but they take longer to kill without hard pings than you can possibly survive. You'll almost always need to revert to weapons that trigger hard pings to kill enemies fast enough to survive the encounter. This is why skilled players will almost never be found without a battle rifle or a carbine, because these weapons provide instant kills to unshielded enemies, and in the case of the BR or carbine, they do so from a safe distance.
Dang, them boys running up.
This reliance on hard ping weapons is what leads to our next point, the lack of options. Despite all the fantastic new weapons, vehicles, and sandbox elements in Halo 2, on Legendary, you will get your anus penetrated if you don't play the game a certain way, meaning you have to use headshot-capable or power weapons throughout most of the game. Since you are the second weakest entity, you don't have long to live, which means you don't have long to shoot, which means anything that doesn't kill the enemies quickly is unviable. In Combat Evolved, you could afford to charge straight at the enemies with an assault rifle because you had stronger shields and that buffer of health. But in Halo 2, charging in with dual SMGs will hardly ever work against anything that isn't a grunt. And if you do survive, chances are there's a few sniper jackals around, so the simple act of leaving cover is risky too. This means for the majority of the game, you're using plasma pistol, BR, or carbine, and you're killing everything from range because you're so fucking weak, any other strategy that puts you in harm's way is likely to get you killed. Hell yeah. One-hit melee deaths. 2 from
Dang, how he jump up like that?
killed. Hell yeah. One-hit melee deaths.
You like locked on to him.
But they hit so fast there isn't much difference. Master Chief is supposed to be the pinnacle of humanity, mankind at its absolute strongest. So why is he dying so quickly and hiding behind cover like a little
Sword lunge.
Point is, this doesn't make for a fun gameplay experience. Combat Evolved had multiple options across all encounters. No one strategy was always the best strategy. Some were better than others in certain scenarios, but for the most part, you could play however you wanted and survive as long as you knew what you were doing. When you have to kill everything from range, it just sucks the fun out of the game, because your playstyle is never changing and you're doing the same thing over and over. It devolves Halo's multi-dimensional gameplay into a duck hunt. Sit back and pick them all off from range, and pray you don't run out of BR ammo, rinse, repeat. Halo 2's lack of viable options makes a Legendary playthrough not just unnecessarily difficult, but also tedious and exhausting.
One of Halo 2's most frustrating elements when it comes to the design of its missions is how the spawning of enemies is handled. The game contains many areas where additional enemies will spawn in, either in the middle of the fight or shortly after you get a checkpoint. The most obvious example of this is the Covenant boarding crafts in Cairo Station, but there are numerous other places in the game that are less obvious, such as here in Habitat Delta, and here, which is also in Habitat Delta. This concept of spawning in new enemies isn't necessarily a bad thing, and hell, it isn't even new in Halo 2. However, it is in the way that the game handles the enemy spawns that makes it such a pain. I want to take a closer look at the 2 examples of enemy spawns in Habitat Delta that I've just shown.
Yeah, because what's wrong with it?
First is an example of what I believe is a good spawning location. The enemies magically appear as soon as you cross an invisible line, yes, but they start out around a corner where you can't see them, and more importantly, they're a safe distance away from you where you can see them before engaging them, and you can put some cover between yourself and them. In other words, you have sufficient time to react to them. Now let's look at it.
When the reticle turns red, you can lunge. Okay. So Halo 2 speedrunning must be crazy. They must use that a lot. Did I watch Halo 2 speedrun? No, I watched Halo 1. Did I see 2? I don't think I did. I know I seen 1, Halo 1 speedrun. Did I see 2 though? Actually, I might have. I don't remember. But yeah, speedrunning, they probably use that a lot. Yeah, pretty sure.
Them. In other words, you have sufficient time to react to them. Now let's look at an example of a poor spawning location, which is, ironically enough, about 10 feet away before you even get your next checkpoint. In this case, the enemies appear at the doorway in front of me, but the line that I have to cross to get
I watched One and Reach. Okay, that's what it was.
Door that they start firing at me at the same time that I can first see them. As a result, I have to get them to spawn and then jump out the window and come back up the stairs. Do you see the difference? One situation spawns enemies in a location where I'm safe from them until I approach them or otherwise get their attention. The other spawns them in a location that immediately puts me in a nearly unsurvivable situation. To me, these poor spawns feel like they were thrown into the game without any real thought behind them. Put simply, they feel rushed. Gee, I wonder why. Halo CE mostly had enemy spawns that I would consider good spawns. The only bad spawns that I can think of apply to the Flood, but they get a pass due to how quickly you can take them out with a shotgun and explosives. My point is this. Halo 2 has more spawns that fall under the category of bad spawns.
Since 2 was rushed, there were a lot of bugs. Halo 2 speedrunning is the most interesting.
It results in situations where you find yourself inching up.
Yeah, I gotta watch some more speedrunning videos.
Turning tail and running back once you've crossed it. Basically, it forces you to know exactly what's coming around the next bend because you've memorized it instead of intelligently reacting to enemies as you encounter them.
RNG plays a far greater role in whether you live or die than it did in CE. For example, before you go down the Gravelift and Grave Mine, you have to clear this room out, but at some point reinforcements come in. Now if you're standing next to the wrong door at the wrong time, you're fucked. Do it again. But good luck predicting which door it is because it's random each time. Now Combat Evolved did have some RNG spawns, but again, because you had that buffer of health, you were able to react to the surprise of those enemies, and most of the time you could avoid dying. Here's another example. When you're floating down the elevator, you can either go down just fine, or you might be so unlucky the enemies notice you before you land.
Oh yeah, that happened to me a few times.
Entirely dependent on RNG, and I have no idea what controls whether the enemies notice you or not. But if you get unlucky at this point, you are completely fucked. The level becomes unbeatable unless you die so many times you go back to checkpoints. Doesn't that say something when Halo 2 needed to implement this feature? Because if it didn't, you would have to restart the entire mission, as there are multiple parts in this game where you get a checkpoint that just screws you over. Here's another point. Halo 2 relies on the defense sections far too often. The first thing Outskirts does is put you into a small arena and sends like 12 waves of bad guys at you. After a while, fighting in the same location starts to wear on your mind, especially if you die and have to do it all over again. It's a deceptive way to increase the length of the levels and the interesting world and universe we could be exploring. It begins to feel much smaller because so frequently we're forced to defend a very small section. That part on Metropolis has about 20 sniper jackals that just keep spawning as you kill them. I mean, what in the fuck is that about? As a normal player, how many of these bastards am I supposed to kill before they stop spawning? I don't know. Halo 1 had a few areas like this where enemies would constantly spawn in, But compare Halo's 5 dropships with Outskirt's 12 waves. The library was full of respawning enemies, but that was the point of the level, to make you feel overwhelmed, like you're being hunted. And you'd have to play a certain way where you're running and gunning in order to survive the library. But again, in Halo 2, you're far too weak to run and gun, so you have to clear out everything. The difficulty of a first-person shooter should not be weighted towards RNG and knowing precisely how many waves will come out at any given part. That's cheap bullshit. FPS games should create challenge through forcing the player to think and react, rather than get lucky.
Let's switch gears for a minute and talk about the other set of enemies that you encounter in the game, the Flood.
While not as challenging as the Covenant, there are still some things that make them harder than they were before. The Flood now take much more damage than they used to, which again makes headshot-capable weapons pretty much mandatory. Even if you shoot off their whip arm, combat forms can still melee you with their other arm. The idea that even after training,
Halo 2 shotgun is so trash compared to 1.
The Flood is a really cool concept.
Actually, no, it's not. This is a horrible idea. The whole idea behind the Flood is to force the player to fight differently than they would against the Covenant. Combat forms come in larger hordes and tend to bum rush you because they're not nearly as intelligent as the Covenant and can be taken down quickly. So why in God's name would you give combat forms something that prevents you from taking them out quickly as they're bum rushing you? The worst part is, some of the Flood elites have a shield and some don't, and until you shoot them, you won't know which is which. This is a small problem when compared to everything else, however it adds an element of unpredictability. Due to your extremely short time to live like we've discussed before, sometimes whether a Flood elite has a shield or not decides whether you live or die. No longer can you go up against a horde of combat forms with a shotgun, pistol, and grenades. Well, for one, the shotgun's been nerfed to hell. And said combat forms have been
super nerf, big nerf,
such that they'll actively evade grenades. Combat forms are also much faster this time around, especially those goddamn human combat forms. And it seems that the combat forms aren't the only faction of the Flood that's been given an intelligence boost.
Dang, he lame. Lunge from far away.
Are much tougher to shoot than they were before, which sounds ridiculous, but I'm not kidding here. Remember how you used to be able to clean up infection forms by just meleeing them as they jump at you? Yeah. That in Halo 2. Infection forms will now effectively juke your melee attacks and will try to avoid you if you decide to use your guns on them. This is rather problematic because infection forms have now become a top priority target due to their ability to reanimate corpses. The way around this is to destroy the bodies once they're on the ground, but there's a problem. The shotgun is the only weapon besides the energy sword that's effective at doing this. And let's face it, you don't have enough shotgun ammo to put an extra shot or 3 into every single combat form that you face. So just melee them instead of shooting to conserve the ammo, you say? Oh, you sweet summer child. Bungie must have fucked something up here because it takes 22 melee attacks to destroy a form corpse unless you're using an energy sword or a brute shot.
That gotta be a bug or a glitch or something.
Attack deals less than 5% of the overall damage that an already dead enemy can withstand.
There's no way that they meant for this to happen.
Fuck.
Surprisingly, the Flood actually have some trade-offs for their new strength. Infection forms are far less numerous, combat forms can now be killed with headshots, and carrier forms will charge at you with the speed and intensity of a drunk snail. And the greatest thing in the world is there is almost no rocket launcher Flood.
Wait. Hold the phone. No rocket launchers? Have you forgotten about Quarantine Zone?
Oh, wait, one hit? But you in the tank.
Seemed like Bungie gave the Flood a bunch of cool new mechanics that really could have shined had the overall challenge not been so frustrating. Being able to pilot vehicles made them a lot scarier than before, but it also makes levels like Quarantine Zone extremely difficult at times. It's pretty shocking how every facet of the game astronomically ramped up the difficulty from the original, except for Flood encounters. But when you factor in the Chief's overall weakness, it still makes fighting the Flood unnecessarily hard.
Now, there's one elephant in the room that we haven't directly addressed yet, so let's do that now. These bastards.
The Jackals.
Seem to appear out of nowhere, take about 1/4 of a second to crouch and aim, and then kill you instantly with one shot that rarely ever misses. Many people have expressed their frustration at the Jackal snipers throughout the years in the form of broken controllers and all-caps rants on internet forums, but none have ever done so quite as eloquently as Mike Miller from HaloBungie.org. For context, this is from his walkthrough, which was written shortly after Halo 2 was released, and long before Halo 3 was even a concept on a drawing board. Allow me to editorialize for a minute in order to express properly how much I despise this new enemy. It's not so much that they're difficult. Indeed, once you go through the initially torturous, brute force process of memorizing their locations one cheap death at a time, they're more or less downgraded from the level of aneurysm-inducing frustration to nuisance. My problem at this point is largely with the way that they
aneurysm
of the game. It's just ridiculous when you can watch every other enemy in the game except for drones, including your unshielded Marines and even grunts, for God's sake, absorb multiple beam rifle shots, and yet the Chief, icon of the series with his fancy armor and upgraded shield, always dies from a single shot. This sort of incongruity serves only to reduce the experience from that of a balanced, consistent, interactive world to typical cheap video game capriciousness. There's also the fact that the presence of Jackal sniper...
You know he upset if he's using capriciousness. Because what does that word even mean? When you upset like that, you just start throwing out any big word you know. Just capriciousness. Capri-Suns.
Cheap video game capriciousness. There's also the fact that the presence of Jackal snipers with their one-shot kills and supernatural accuracy and reaction time tends to limit your options in many areas, subverting the open-endedness of the combat, which otherwise is the series' best quality. Bungie, if you're listening, please don't do this to us again, okay? It's just annoying. So many people think that Halo 2 on Legendary is hard all because of the Jackal snipers. I disagree. The Jackal snipers aren't the actual problem, they're the most obvious symptom of the underlying problem. And that problem is what we've already discussed. You're the single weakest enemy in the entire game other than the Flood infection forms, and the enemies that spawn in the middle of the fight. In fact, you know how I know for sure that the Jackal snipers aren't the actual problem? Because these guys weren't a problem, even though they still kill you with one shot. Because they don't spawn in the middle of the fight, and they have bright blue headgear that allows you to see them really easily.
Finally, we'll talk vehicles. Seems like once again, all the enemies in the vehicles are much stronger than you. Scientifically speaking, what is Halo 2 conveying to us? That the Master Chief is such a huge fucking wimp, piloting any sort of land or aircraft vehicle instantly makes it weaker? The hull of the tank must literally be decayed.
Dang, why the tank dying so quick?
It was cool of Bungie to make the vehicles destructible. It added a nice bit of realism to the game. However, once again, you just die far too quickly in them. And if you happen to be on foot fighting other vehicles, you're fucked. Good luck taking advantage of the boarding mechanic, as it's so risky you might as well just accept your fate and try again. On top of all this, the vehicular sections are all plagued with the same repetitive spawns we mentioned earlier. Why are there 10 ghosts that come around from this corner? Why are there 10 more ghosts that come around from that corner? Where is the Covenant keeping all of these?
And his tank is constantly on fire.
First played Halo 2. We've always wondered what an ideal legendary difficulty would be like. We believe tweaking some numbers would actually make the game as fun and challenging as Combat Evolved. And if we could change things, here's what we'd do.
First and foremost, increase the Chief's health. You've got to feel like a badass super soldier and tough to take down. The time to kill you needs to be long enough for you to be able to react to your situation, though not so long that you can just tank a bunch of damage and ignore using cover.
Number 2, increase the time for enemies to notice and shoot at you, especially for sniper jackals, so that you have more time to react.
Number 3, decrease the damage of melee attacks in general.
One hit?
Stand a melee attack if you get hit once at close range, and the attack should be telegraphed enough such that you can outright avoid it if you absolutely need to.
Number 4, decrease the fire rate of elites. No bullshit where they can fire faster than you.
Number 5, massively tone down the movement speed and melee speed of human combat forms. Increase the effectiveness of melee against combat forms and drastically decrease the number of melees needed to destroy a body.
Number 6. Sniper Jackals take 2 shots to kill, are slightly less accurate, and have longer pauses between shots. These changes would be made for obvious reasons.
Number 7. Grenades should have a much greater effect on groups of enemies and should drop more frequently. Number 8. For tough sections, include a few overshields or active camo power-ups. With these changes, we think Halo 2's difficulty would be as close to perfect as possible. And the funny thing about these changes is that this is basically what Halo 3 did. You ever wonder why it's my favorite Halo campaign? Because it's basically Halo 2 without all the cheap.
Oh, Halo 3 is his favorite?
To summarize, this video might come across like both me and Hokie hate Halo 2, and to be clear, we really don't. We love the game, which is why the absurd.
I think I like Halo 2 more than 3.
So much. As a kid, I tried so hard to find the skulls and get the perfect difficulty just to play it with a fair challenge and have fun. Back on the Xbox, that was an awful lot of time and energy just spent trying to make the game fun, you know? I hope we were able to highlight all the important reasons why Halo 2's campaign is so fucking difficult. But if there's something we forgot, leave it in the comments below. I want to thank Hokiebird428 for coming on and helping me with this video.
Shout out Hokiebird and shout out Act Man. Yeah, if y'all like this video, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see y'all on the next one. I'm out.